Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us, and all of those who are joining us online. This is kind of the inaugural Mayor's Town Hall meeting, and this is not just my meeting, it's actually the town administration's meeting. And we hope to be able to do this quarterly. We'll see what the reception is and the kind of conversation and dialogue we have here. This is really intended to be your meeting, so you can raise whatever questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, commendations that you want. But what I'd like to do is take at least the first few minutes to update the community on 3 different topics. But before doing that, I want to note that this is not a town council meeting. So we actually do have a member, where is she? Yes, a town council member here, but this is not a town council meeting. So if you raise issues that require a legislative response, I can say, as one member of the council, which the mayor is, just one voting member of the council, I'm happy to take that into consideration and recommend it to my fellow council members, but that is something that will need to be decided by the full council at a council meeting. But this is, again, the town administration, so there are a lot of issues with regard to day-to-day blocking and tackling, the implementation and administration and enforcement of our ordinances and our rules and regulations, and we can certainly talk about all of that. But before going any further, I wanted to introduce our senior staff here at the town, because these are the people who are responsible for serving you all. And I think they do a very good job of that. There are areas where we will strive to improve, we can improve, and I trust that we will be able to do so. So I think you all know Stephanie Tillerson, the town administrator, Aaron Pomeranke, who is our communications director. We have Dorota Schubert, who is our finance director. Bruce Spiker is our building inspector, director of the building inspection department. John Taylor is our planning director, and Brian Gottschalk, who's just back from, and he can talk about this, the Governor's Hurricane Conference down in Florida, who is our public works director. And we also have Neil running the show over there. So before opening up, I think there were 3 topics that general topics that I wanted to at least tee up and provide some input from our side on. One and first is we start the holiday season this weekend, Memorial Day, and then feeds into the summer season, to let you know what the town is doing to prepare for that, to make sure that we are anticipating as best we can every issue that's likely to rise, to deal with traffic, to deal with management, beach management, trash on the beach, code enforcement, etc. So what I'd like to first do, perhaps, because I know he's got to run, is turn it over to Michael, who runs Barrier Island Ocean Rescue. I don't know if you all are familiar with the role they play. So these are the folks that Michael and Rob and the team have a dual function for the town. They are basically beach patrol, but they also do code enforcement, not only on the beach, but around the island. He's got to dash off because they're trying to get ready for this weekend as well and training all of their staff. But Michael, it'd be helpful to have everybody better understand what you guys are going to be doing on the beach, how you're going to be staffing the beach, and then also what's going to be happening from a scheduling standpoint for code enforcement.
Sure thing. So again, my name is Michael Sosnowski. Almost everybody doesn't know my first name on the beach. Everybody calls me Soz. So if you ask one of our staff what Michael said, they're not going to know. For Memorial Day, the way our contract is written is it's seasonally scaled. So we're here year round, but it's scaled down to very light in the wintertime, and then we scale up for the summertime. And the way that we scale up for Memorial Day is it's written in the contract. The Friday before Memorial Day, we go from our current 3 patrols to 6 patrols. So we will have 6 independent units patrolling the beach They're working 8-hour staggered shifts, so we cover starting at 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. But you got 2 units from 7 to 3, 2 units from 10 to 6, 2 units from 12 to 8. So very rarely are all 6 units on the beach at the same time, which is why people say, why haven't I seen beach patrol for hours? Well, because there's 12 miles of beach, and there's typically only a few units moving up and down on the beach at a time. But we are constantly patrolling. We will post up in areas of high activity. It's just trying to be visible if people need us, so that we're not constantly driving past families with kids and toys and things like that. And we tend to stay where we're needed, so where the people are, where the calls are coming from. We do respond as part of the 911 system. So we are an agency that's accredited by DHEC as an advanced life support provider. And because of that, we get dispatched to any calls that happen on the beach for a medical emergency. So if you're in doubt, always call 911 and they will dispatch
Hey, can you
us.
talk a little bit about the training of your staff?
Sure. So what I have.
Yeah, EMT, advanced paramedic.
So the training that Mayor Belt mentioned, what we're doing now, because we get our staff, our seasonal staff comes, usually they're still in college. So we get them starting maybe this first week, second week of May, and we have until this weekend to get them 196 hours of training, which if you add that up is more than 4 40-hour weeks in a very short time. So we push it, and it's a lot of information that they have to do. So they have to do 48 hours. If they're a new employee, they have to do 48 hours of specific ocean rescue training. So that is all of the things that you have to do for us to certify you as a USLA, United States Life Saving Association, open water rescue guard. That certification only works on this beach. So it's so specific that we are certified to train these guys to be ocean rescue specific to Kiowa and Seabrook as well, because we cover them as well. So that's the first 48 hours of their training. If they have no medical credentials, if they're not an EMT, paramedic, advanced, then they have to do 40 hours of emergency medical responder training. That's what we're doing this week as a 40-hour class. We put all of our staff through it if they're not already EMTs. And then we also, Rob is actually in charge of training all of the county park staff to the same level. So you have sort of a consistent lifeguard training across the beach that we have here. We also have to do the 4-hour CPR course, a 40-hour jet ski course. Some of you may have seen that walking on the beach last couple of weeks. We've done 2 rounds of that. So 40 hours of rescue training specific to using the jet skis, because that's most of our rescues are pretty far out, because if you're familiar with the beach, it's long and shallow. You could be 200 yards out and still be chest deep. So a lot of our rescues tend to happen on floats, kayaks, kiteboards, things like that. They're far. They're not close enough to swim. Or they're boats, because we respond to the river as well. So could be a boat issue. And then they do 24 hours of driving training, specific to running lights and sirens in our trucks, because they're registered by DHEC. They have to do 16 hours of DHEC classes and then 8 hours of beach driving with us. So if anybody saw that set up on the beach the other day, we have alleyways and cones and turns and things that they have to do, and ways they have to perform before they're cut loose to drive on the beach. So that's a total of 156 hours of training is what we're trying to get done these couple weeks.
And
Yes.
how many who has what kind of certification or qualification?
Forgive me, yes. So as an agency, we are an advanced life support provider, meaning that if you are a paramedic, you can work up to that level. So we have 5 paramedics on staff, I believe. Some of those are nurses as well, so they carry a dual credential. We have 2 advanced EMTs, which are ones that can start IVs and put on the cardiac monitor. We do everything up to the point where they can hurt you. So if your paramedics can help do everything, but they also can do some damage. And that's a 2-year program to be able to be certified at that level. The advanced provider is 300 hours on top of the 220-hour basic course. So the EMT basic, most of our staff are going to be basics. And the way that DHEC scales the response is you get that first responder, that EMR, you get the basic, and then if necessary, you get the ALS unit coming with all the ALS gear. So when we have an ALS unit staffed, which is Rob always, and then also whoever else is a paramedic on the beach, they're carrying different devices with them in their truck than the other guys on the beach. So they'll have the cardiac monitor, they'll have all the IV gear, all the drugs. So that person, depending on the nature of the call, will be coming from wherever they are. So they'll stop doing what they're doing and respond to that call if it needs an ALS response. If it's a stingray sting and the person's fine, it can be a BLS response. But we can operate up to that level.
And apart from the medical assistance or life-saving in the ocean, how does that interplay with the code enforcement that's ongoing on the beach, whether it's dogs off leash, e-bikes, glass bottles, what have you?
So when Beach Patrol was founded in, I guess, the 80s, they were combined with the chair company. So they sort of funded the lifeguards through the chairs. And that stopped in the 90s because the USLA said you can't be accredited. You can't do both. You can't be serving customers, selling chairs, and being a lifeguard. However, lifeguards are tasked with enforcing the rules to keep people safe. It's a public safety function. So several of our staff are code enforcement officers as well, dictated by the town. And what we'll do is the reason we were incepted is to enforce codes on the beach. Basically, shorebirds. If we didn't enforce the critical habitat area at Seabrook would lose their ability to control the beach. U.S. Fish and Wildlife told them that, which is why they came to us and said, hey, will you do this for us? Because somebody's got to enforce those codes and ordinances up to the level of the state, and then more restriction beyond that is what the town can do. So our guys, everybody knows, they take a quiz actually on all of the ordinances. So everybody knows them. So even if they're not a code enforcement officer, they're going to stop you and tell you what the rules are and ask you to comply. And then if you need to be given a ticket to comply, they'll call a code enforcement officer down to deal with that. Most of our tickets we've written so far this year, we've written almost 30 just for this year to date. So it's not summertime yet, so that number will go up. But most of them are parking related, either at the bridge or at Beachwalker. There's 16 of those. The rest are leash laws. And then we've got some business license tickets, some drone tickets, e-bike tickets, harassing an alligator ticket. So things like that. And that's done during the day, all day by Beach Patrol. And we typically don't come off the beach unless we're requested for something. So if there's a complaint, and we have the staff present, we'll be able, and we know the beach is covered, we'll come off the beach to be able to write a ticket on weekends or times when the town is closed or the daytime guys aren't here. And then at night, from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. is our short-term rental enforcement contract, where we're primarily tasked with patrolling and monitoring short-term rentals, but also we are here to provide the assistance for after-hours code enforcement for the town. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to clarify what you said about Seabrook. I think I heard you say that you train the Seabrook staff, but do you also patrol Seabrook with that same staff that you mentioned?
Yes, ma'am. We're
Maybe
contracted by.
we probably need to repeat,
Oh,
at
yes.
least briefly, the questions for the people who are being streamed, because I'm not sure that they can hear the questions, so.
The question was, does your staff patrol Seabrook or train Seabrook? Or was that the question? So we have a separate contract with Seabrook, so we patrol their beach as well. It is all the same staff. So they're scheduled for either Seabrook or Kiowa, depending on how the schedule works out based on what shift they're doing. But Seabrook is a much smaller scope than Kiowa for us.
Any other questions for Silas? So if it's a medical emergency, you can call 911.
Always.
And that, you'll hear that on your device there on your hip.
Yes, sir.
But other than that, for a code enforcement issue, how do they reach you?
We have a dedicated Beach Patrol phone number. It's published on all of the town emails. So if you'll scroll to the bottom and the hotline numbers are down there, it's 843-518-2880. So you can call us anytime and we will respond. There have been issues recently with cell coverage on the beach for some reason. So if somebody answers the phone and says Seabrook Beach Patrol, it's because we've programmed it to roll over to the other phone that will be answered in case there's no service. So you're not calling the wrong person, and they will tell us by radio where they need to go. Just make sure you know where you are on the beach when you call us, because that's the one thing we need to know to be able to respond to you is what boardwalk are you closest to, what landmarks, things like that.
Any other questions?
You had the other question about e-bikes.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, it's come up, it had a brown bag lunch, it was mentioned there a couple times, gotten several emails. There is still some confusion on the part of a lot of folks as to whether or not e-bikes are prohibited on Kiowa Island. They are prohibited by KICA, I believe, so they're not allowed behind the gate. The town does not have a prohibition
Except on the beach.
on e-bikes. We have a prohibition on motorized vehicles on the beach.
Correct.
So, then the question has arisen as to, well, they never seem to enforce the e-bike restrictions and motorized vehicle restrictions on the beach. I know some discretion has to be exercised. At the end of the day, you're the ones that are dealing with this.
So typically what we'll do when you see us make contact with an e-bike and then they ride off on that e-bike is we have them turn off the motor, so they have to pedal. And that's the only way for us to get that bike off the beach appropriately without tying up one of our trucks, however long it takes to take them back to Beachwalker Park, or sometimes they've ridden in from Freshfields or elsewhere. So we have them turn the motor off and leave the beach. And the reason we have them turn the motor off is for safety, because I've seen people riding e-bikes going 30 miles an hour on the beach. And it's hard for us to catch them in our trucks. I mean, you're turning on the lights and the sirens trying to get their attention, and they're riding away from you. Because we don't go that fast on the beach. That's dangerous. So we try to always stop them, turn the motor off, and have them exit the beach at the closest appropriate point, at which point they're still in violation of KICA's covenants, but they're at least off the beach, and we're doing what we can from our end.
But do you issue tickets?
We do. We've already written one this year. Ideally, the goal is compliance for us. So if you're compliant with a warning, I didn't know, I had no idea anybody restricted e-bikes anywhere, which is mostly what people say. I thought you could take this everywhere you could take a bicycle. We'll say, educate them on the ordinance and have them leave the beach. It's when people are not compliant that they get citations. So that's our tool that we have to get people to the point of compliance. And our tickets can get very, very expensive. Yes, ma'am.
Filling in holes on the beach, is that the job of your crew then?
It is. However, if it's below the high tide line, we don't bother filling it in because the nature will do that for us. If it's above the high tide line, that's when we make contact with folks who are digging the holes when we see them and say, hey, will you please fill this in when you're done? And then as we're doing our final run for the day, so usually right around 8 o'clock, between 7 and 8, we do what we call a full run, where we go end to end and try to make sure we've swept everything on the beach that we can. That's when we find, overnight storage, people keeping their chairs and things under boardwalks. That's when we find the holes that are left behind because the family is gone now. And that's typically when we fill in the largest of them. We are not going to be able to get to all of them. There's just not enough of us. But we fill in the ones that we see are as a problem above the high tide line. Yes, ma'am.
How do e-bikes get on the island? Seems easily, they're not stopped or not noticed.
Right. That's a question for the community association at the gate, because we're not going to know, we're not going to look for them until they're on the beach in the first place.
Right. I was going to say you can go through Beachwalker County Park. It's a public access.
And they cannot enforce KICA regulations. They're code enforcement officers for the town, and the town doesn't have a prohibition on e-bikes. So that's a separate issue. If there's e-bikes behind the gate, then you got to call KICA security about that.
Quick, go to the beach, and then you have to call code.
Yeah, that's,
And you have to memorize all of these phone numbers.
thank you. Oh, sorry.
I got one quick question. I'm from Ward Joe out originally. The Shaboonies,
Yes, sir.
is there ever a problem, you foresee a problem where people are stacked so deep? Let's use the word wide. So they go out to the tide. When you got high tide and you've got tents and Shaboonies, do you foresee a problem with people expanding their territorial, 20 kids and families where they're safety-wise, you can't get through it?
So what we've seen, And this has come up at the public safety meetings. This has been discussed when all the other beaches were outlawing shabumis or other beaches that have, all of your shade structures must be single pole, if you ever heard that one before. Those are for largely crowded public beaches, so that you don't have somebody taking up, 700 square feet just for themselves. The shabumis in particular are a problem for us because of the motion, the way they flap in the wind. You cannot, it's a visual impairment. You can't look through it. Like, you can look under a 10 by 10 pop-up tent and see a dog off leash or see the water from the dunes, whatever it might be. However, as it was discussed at the public safety meeting, it didn't go very far in terms of should we restrict this, because Kiowa's private and you always have room to stretch people out sort of along the beach. You don't need to be right in front of your boardwalk. You can be 100 yards in either direction. So as long as, for us, from a public safety standpoint, we will maintain a vehicle access way behind the line of whatever people have set up and the dunes. We are going to move you if you're set up right there. But as far as outlawing shabumis or any other shade structure, we have not done anything about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So staying on the beach for a minute, there's been a lot of questions, concerns about trash management on the beach. Brian, perhaps you can update us on, I believe all the enclosures have been rebuilt and reinstalled, trash cans and all of those. Schedule now for our new trash service provider, Trident, who's replaced Carolina Waste, which is now we're about 3 weeks into that. At least thus far, I think many fewer reports. I don't know what your experience is, but thus far it seems to be going pretty well with Trident. But what's their schedule for trash pickup?
Right, that's right. So as you all know, we've got the new contract with Trident Waste Services. So they're taking over all of the solid waste services that we had originally with Carolina Waste to include the beach trash pickup. Without getting too far into the past, we know that we had some issues with trash collection on the beach with our previous provider. But we do feel very confident that our new provider with Trident is going to do what they're contractually obligated to do, which is what we think is sufficient to make sure that there's no issues with trash on the beach. Starting with collecting stopping at every receptacle and clearing it out in its entirety. That was a problem that we had with our former contractor. So the schedule right now, starting this weekend, they're going to switch to trash collection on the beach every day. So there will be a vehicle out there collecting trash, stopping at every receptacle every day. They typically start in the morning. Just logistically, that's kind of the process. We like to get them out there before the beach gets too crowded, just so they can maneuver safely and swiftly. And so they'll typically start around 7 or 8 o'clock, kind of depending on what the tide's doing. And then they'll work their way down the beach and hopefully have everything collected, around 10 o'clock in the morning. We have talked with the contractor. We are going to be putting some extra cans out at some of the high volume boardwalks for the holiday seasons. So your Memorial Day, your 4th of July, and Labor Day at the end of the summer. Because we do see that there's a need for more trash collection. As long as there's trash cans on the beach, we do think that those areas need supplemental enclosure, supplemental resource to throw that refuse away. So we will have extra capacity at some of those high volume boardwalks. And it's a trial for us too right now. We're gonna see how it goes this Memorial Day weekend. If we need to make some changes based off of what we find out then we're ready to do that, and the contractor's ready to do that. So we're looking forward to having a clean beach and clean trash collection operations out there with this new contractor. And again, we really encourage everybody to, if you see something that you don't think is right, or if they did something that they're not supposed to, or just didn't collect something, please let us know. We're really trying to make sure that everyone gets off on the right foot. The Beach Patrol and the Chair and Umbrella Service has a good relationship with the town. They let us know if there's ever something that we need to know about. So we certainly encourage y'all to do that, because y'all are the ones that are out there a lot more than we are. So y'all are really helpful to be our eyes, not just for the beach, but the whole island too. So we encourage y'all to let us know if you see anything on the beach, or just general questions. We're always happy to answer general questions and get your thoughts and opinions on what's going on out there.
Maura?
I assume that the new vendor, Trident, has been made aware of the nesting issues, so they'll be careful.
Absolutely.
They understand what they're supposed to look for and, okay.
Yes, ma'am. They're not, these guys out here are not new to driving on the beach and driving on Key West Beach. They knew that coming into it, and we have talked to them about that. Thank you for pulling that out there. Yes, ma'am.
Bags on the trash cans.
They're ordered, so as soon as they come in, they're gonna be back out there. I know that's a big amenity to everyone out there. As you all know, unfortunately, we got a lot of destruction from December. We're still trying to recoup through all that, but those are coming back. We have not forgot about them. Yes, ma'am.
So, after storms, especially those unexpected ones, where those huge items were on the beach, like umbrellas and trash cans and things like that, is that gonna be Trident's responsibility or Beach Patrol's responsibility to pick those things up?
The responsibility for the trash cans are gonna be, oh, sorry. Yeah, the question was for the items on the beach, when there's a storm approaching, one that we should know about. I should say that because we didn't know about December. But items that are on the beach, there's kind of a split responsibility. The town is gonna be responsible, ultimately, for the whole beach, I will say that. But we are gonna focus on the trash cans first within town staff, because those are ours that we put out there for everybody. So if we know that there's a storm coming, we're gonna get those off the beach. We'll leave them on as long as we can, for people to use, but we're gonna pull them off in as much time as we need to make sure that everything's off the beach before a storm comes. The chair and umbrella companies and the resort and the Kiawah Partners, they manage their equipment on the beach, so they're gonna do the same thing. When there's a storm coming, they're gonna remove their equipment from the beach, or at least get it into a safe, secure position prior to any storm or tidal event coming.
And then those unexpected events,
The
those parties is responsible for their own cleanup?
Yes. So debris that has washed up onto the beach from elsewhere, the town will typically take the lead on getting that cleaned up. But the resort, the Kiawah Partners, the Timbers, Island Beach Service, they send their team members out afterwards. If they did leave anything on the beach, they're going out there to recover that equipment, and we're working alongside them to make sure that everything gets cleaned up, because again, we do like to make sure that everyone's working together, and we like to have a clean beach.
And in that spirit of cooperation, I do know that we have a Kika board member here. She can identify herself if she wants to, but I hope in that spirit of cooperation, everybody would pitch in as necessary, because I've made the point previously that it's actually 10-mile strip of beach from the mean high water mark back to the property lines is actually owned by the community association. My hope springs eternal that they will be as equally interested in maintaining common property on the beach to the same extent that they do elsewhere on the island. They do a very good job of that, but hopefully some cooperation there as well. Any other questions for Brian? Yes.
I do have one clarifying point, just about debris removal and trash on the beach for Beach Patrol, because everybody says, well, you're there, why didn't you pick it up? It's not part of our contractor responsibility, but also we are loath to put trash in our trucks because we use them for patient transport. So if you ever tried to hand us a poop bag or hand us something covered in sand and mud, and we don't take it from you and we point to the trash can, that's why. 'Cause we're trying to keep that area as clean as we can. And we will, if it's a safety issue, we will take care of it. Either wrapping caution tape or securing it so that the next high tide doesn't float it off somewhere else. But debris removal is not part of what we do.
Alligator removal is part of what you do. So I want to talk about a couple of recent incidences of alligators in the surf.
It happens every May during mating season, April and May. And this year has been, we've seen much higher volume this year of alligators that have been pushed out of ponds by big alpha males that are now using the ocean to transit as a highway to get to somewhere else. They find new water that way. And typically they're small, sometimes they're not. But part of our responsibility, working with the town wildlife department, is removing those that need to be removed from the beach and putting them in whatever the closest appropriate body of water is. And then sometimes if they're too big for us, we just move the people and let the alligator go where it goes wherever it wants.
Have we given up 100% on recycling?
No, but it is logistically a lot more complicated than just trash. So right now there's one truck that runs out on the beach and collects everything. So to separate trash and recycle means that we need to either send that truck to the dump and then come back and do recycling, or have two trucks on the beach. And you know, I like to put public safety first in every way I can. Less trucks on the beach is better. Less runs of a single truck on the beach is better. And so that's kind of the short answer to that is no, I don't ever want to give up on recycling. Logistically, having the trash receptacles on the physical beach makes it very, very difficult. And I'm not going to say that it's impossible or we'll never do it, or perhaps on down the road we'll have a better operation of trash can locations or what have you. But for right now, unfortunately, there's not going to be recycling on the beach. We're not going to be able to differentiate that. Because then as soon as you know, if we were to try that prematurely, then the county's going to get really upset with having contaminated recycling. And I feel like we've made really big jumps to make them happy that our trash is separated. So we just want to make sure that we do it right the first time.
And with three trash receptacles, sometimes those fill up with regular trash as well. And what you don't want to have is a half-empty recycling can and overflowing trash left on the beach as well. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, still on preparation for this weekend and the holiday season, traffic management, traffic congestion. I hope everybody will have noticed that Tony, one of our code enforcement officers, who's kind of the point person out there every morning from about 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning, directing traffic at the main gate. So to make sure that flows through and it's not a big backup, going all the way to Cassique. It seems to be working pretty effectively right now. What we want to do is we've regularized that to a greater extent, and we will be extending that into Friday evening because we anticipate a lot of traffic coming in late on Friday. Now, beware that there's going to be less ability to, make sure that traffic flows as smoothly because all the traffic in the morning is people that already have passes, the vast majority. So it's just getting them through the stop sign and past the first gate. A lot of the people coming in on Friday and Saturday are going to need passes. So there's less that can be done there, but nonetheless, we're going to try to manage that as best we can. So we will also have somebody out on Saturday morning when check-in day as well. We're going to have code enforcement officers working on the weekend and making sure that we don't have any issues along Beachwalker Drive and Kiawah Island Parkway as well at the bridge. Anything I'm missing there? Anything to add on kind of the scheduling for? Okay.
No, I think you covered it. So yes, between our 3 daytime code enforcement officers are going to be rotating. But the important thing to know and hear is that we're going to have the help on the weekends. In addition to that, our off-duty deputy contract with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office, it kicks in actually the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. So next weekend, when I mean it kicks in, we already have a contract with them, right? So what? 2 days. Yeah, 2 days. So what that means is that we have town council through the contract, we pay for additional deputies to come during our peak time, Memorial to Labor Day. So we will get that additional help as well. So I have the schedule here, so I'm hopefully, if you guys see anything or have problems, feel free to reach out to the mayor, shoot him. I used to love getting those emails, but no, feel free to take photos, share them with us. No, let us know, because we will have our staff there, we will have deputies there, but if for some reason the backup occurs, we are also working with the county. Park, we are actually having a meeting this week, essentially bring everyone together, everyone referring to the park, if the sheriff's office is available, our staff. We're going to essentially all talk about getting ready and prepared for this weekend through Labor Day. So hopefully, things should go much smoother. I'm hoping those that live on Beach Walkers, since the county has put in the queuing system, hopefully that has helped some. We do realize that there still was backup, and we're still trying to address that to make sure that doesn't happen. But as the mayor said, I believe with the new scheduling and with the additional deputies, hopefully we will help mitigate that. Also, in addition to now, we have where our code enforcement officers can help with this is we now have Beach Walker, it is posted, so we now tow. So before, we used to just give tickets, so we're hoping that would deter people from just parking on the side of the road and getting out and walking to the beach. So we now have a contract to be able to also tow. So we are trying to do as much as we can to prevent a lot of, cars backing up. Yes?
Excellent.
Just a quick question. We've talked about this a whole bunch, but the signage coming onto the island, is that going to be from the town or from KICA as far as what's the appropriate lane to be in? Because the residents, we all get in that right-hand lane, and sure enough, I need mask.
Well, one of the things we are looking at that would be essentially the town. And I know we've talked with our Public Works Department, and I'll just have to confirm, I'm not sure the status of that, but if not, we'll get back with you. We are looking at, and we've also talked with KICA in terms of putting in appropriate larger signage, because the sign that's up there is either in the wrong location, it's too small, you can't see it, so, yeah, that's correct. So we are looking at potentially adding some additional signage, but that,
Town that does that, that's what I'm trying to.
it would be the town.
It'll be the town that
Yes.
does this prior to the gate.
That's correct. It would be the town that would do that.
All right.
That's correct. But yes, that is, I'm writing it down to get back with you on that, to know exactly when we will be able to get that installed.
Anything on summer season, holiday weekend preparation? Any questions? Because I want to move on to preparation for another season, which is the hurricane season and emergency preparedness. I don't know who kind of wants to start here. I know that our Director of Public Safety, Craig Harris, had a doctor's appointment, family issue, so couldn't be with us. We've talked about the recent tabletop emergency preparedness tabletop exercise the town went through. There's a county-wide one coming up. And then Brian also just got back, as I mentioned at the outset, from the Florida Governor's Hurricane Conference last week as well. I think everybody's probably heard, I'm not sure the details. I don't think NOAA releases the official hurricane season forecast, and I think that's in 2 or 3 days.
They'll release it on the 23rd.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
So-
yeah, and I can just say, so far, right now, I think it's University of, Colorado State University, they normally do a pretty good job in this release. So right now, what they're predicting is 23 named storms, and 11 of those.
14 on average.
Yeah.
So 23 versus 14.
And hurricanes, they predict 11. The Atlantic.
7 average. Yeah.
The Atlantic, they said it's going to be very busy just because the waters are prime. Yep, they're warmer. So right now, that is the prediction. They come back out, I think, in June 11th, July 9th, and August 6th, if they have to make any adjustments, but right now, 23 named storms and 11 hurricane, and they predict that out of that, 5 would.
5 were
be-
Cat 3 or above.
5 would
Out
be,
of 3 average.
yep, 5 to reach major hurricane strength. So, we're,
Out there so like visitors know not to come.
I know, that's right. Yeah, but with that, I will let Aaron talk about how we're trying to prepare for that.
And as Mayor Belt mentioned, we had a EOC exercise earlier this month, and this includes all of the island entities.
Emergency Operations Center.
Yes. Sorry. There's a lot of lingo that we use. So this is essentially the county came and they assessed us, and all of the island entities that normally respond in emergency situations were here. We all worked together. They had a scenario, and then we worked together how we would address that scenario. It was a lot of flooding, so we do that every year. We also do exercises throughout the year that are on different crisis situations. So I know we have one planned for, I believe, active shooter later this year. So any of those critical incidents, we exercise with other island entities. We also did a code red test earlier last month. So hopefully if you're signed up for code red, that's our emergency alert system. Hopefully you received that test, and essentially it just allows us to test to make sure that the messages are going through, but also that you're receiving it, and in case you need to update any contact information. If you're not already signed up for Code Red, please do. This is really important, especially during emergencies. You can receive it through text, phone call, email, and it's just a really great way for you to be aware of what's going on, especially for critical incidents that come up on the island. We also have a couple of hurricane guides. So we have them on our website. We have a Kiowa hurricane guide. There's also the county came out with one. The state came out with one too, but they haven't sent it to us yet. So once we have that, we'll have those in our lobby. But they're on our website, and then there's a few in the lobby as well if you want to take those. And then Disaster Awareness Day is the 31st, which is next Friday. I encourage everyone to come out. It's a really good opportunity to just learn about hurricane preparedness. Any questions that you have, all the subject matter experts that can answer your questions will be there. So it's just a really good opportunity to learn more about how to stay prepared.
Are you gonna record that, or we're gonna be out of town and we hate that we're missing this?
We are not going to record it, but if you have any questions, we're happy to get you connected where you need to, who you need to be.
Questions, we enjoy the speakers.
Yeah, and so that might be something that we could do in the future. It is at the Sandcastle, so we're a little limited what we can do. But that is something that we could consider in the future. I think that's a great idea.
So the code red, I'm sure there probably is a way, if I'm signed up to have it all, a text and email and a phone call, can you reduce that number somehow?
Definitely. Just send me all your information and we'll set it up for you. You just tell me which one your preferred one is. We can get it set up. Yeah, sure. All right.
Anything else, Brian, from a prep standpoint?
So just to kind of give a really, really brief rundown of how we prepare for storms. The town has contracts with third parties to do debris management and debris monitoring. So when we do get a big event, we got those teams that can come in with heavy equipment and can help get the roadways cleared quickly. And also we've got teams that are monitoring their operations. So in the event that it is a federal declaration, we have those in place so that we can assure that we're complying with FEMA regulations for cleaning up after a storm. So yeah, I'm talking with those teams pretty much weekly throughout hurricane season to make sure that everything's good to go. They bring in everything from equipment to remove debris all the way up to housing and water and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a full scale, as much as we would need to move forward after an event. And then other than that, we talked about how we secure the beach prior to a storm coming, because that's really important. Everything's is pretty much a projectile out there that's not secured. So we pay really close attention to that. And then we're working internally very diligently with our staff to make sure that we've got our planning procedures in place. That's what we do with these tabletop exercises, and we have more meetings with our immediate staff that is part of the emergency management team to make sure that if and when that time comes, we're all, we know our role and we can go out with our feet, hit the ground running, so.
If I can just add one comment to that, just to reassure everyone that when a storm is coming, and we know because it's essentially now we have sometimes a week notice, we open up what's called our MEOP, which is operated here. Essentially, this back room becomes the Municipal Emergency Command Center. And it involves some town staff, but I think more importantly, when we have these meetings, we do these calls, we have our entities involved. So they're at the table with us. So we have representatives from the association, we have representatives from the resort, from Kiowa Partners, from Edens, for Freshfields, and for KIU. So we're all sitting around the table, and we're all hearing the same things. The town takes the lead, but we do calls with the county Emergency Command Center. We get the calls from the governor's office, from the state EOC. So we're all essentially making sure that there's, if there's any met needs or unmet needs, rather, we make sure that we try to get that to whomever asks for it. So we really do work kind of very, very hand in hand when it comes to a storm, and we're, even when the offices may close, we're coming in, we're sitting at the table. If we have to evacuate, we take staff members. Kika typically takes their COO, comes with us, so that there's always a communication that's going on between the town and the association. So we are very much in line with each other during this process. Bruce, quickly, do you want to add anything from a damage assessment team piece?
The only thing that I want to add is, we already talked about all the exercises we go through, and they continue pretty much all through the season, whether it's with the entire stakeholders on board or whether it's just internal staff. The damage assessment team, when we are 72 hours out from landfall, they're put on alert, all leave is canceled. I'm sorry? Oh, who is the damage assessment team? Damage assessment team is another role that our code enforcement officers play. So we have 5 members, inspectors that work for me are also part of the damage assessment team. Our main obligation initially is to do a preliminary damage assessment directly after the storm when it is actually, when it's safe to go out. We go out, make sure that the roadways are clear. If not, which ones are. We have a software that we utilize that in real time identifies which roads are closed. And so we know Brian's team will take care of barricading roads along with Kika. It's a joint effort. And the other thing, we're obviously looking for damage for homes. During the preliminary assessment, typically we don't do photos. However, we will do photos. For preliminary damage assessment, we will take pictures of houses and share those with Kika. Kika then has homeowners' information, obviously, and they will share that information with you. That is one of our procedures, so that you're aware that, if you've lost a few shingles on your roof or what have you, and that you're aware what kind of condition your home is, so you can be somewhat put at ease as the storm is passing. So After that, if we had any severe damage, then we go into what we call detailed assessment, where we physically go through the homes if we have access, or we view them from the outside. If we also have MOUs with structural engineers, if that's needed. In cases of our bridge and some of our commercial structures, if we need to have structural engineers come in, we do have that capability as well.
We'll be getting another drone as well, and I think we can utilize drone footage and then be able to post that on the town's website as well. Lisa, do you have a?
So it's probably a naive question, but I mean, we've got some known hotspots on the island that always flood. And so I'm curious, is there anything that can be done proactively when we know a storm is coming to lessen that?
So not to speak to behind the gate so much, because the town, our mitigation efforts are before the gate. Anything behind the gate, that's going to be within the community association's jurisdiction. But I can say that I do know that the Lakes Department, they always drain their ponds prior to a flooding or tidal event. Outside of that, I know they've got pumps that they implement when the water gets high, but I honestly can't speak too much to what they do behind the gate to mitigate and prepare. Ahead of the gate, we really have, so when we redid our road back in 2019, we netted about 3 inches of roadway, and not to get into it, but that model showed us that would mitigate nuisance flooding. However, we still do know that especially the area at Mingo Point will flood at an event in another area kind of around the real estate office. We monitor it, and then if it gets to the point where it's looking flooded, then we have presence there to make sure that people don't go through, and we'll barricade that as necessary and wait till either the water recedes or what have you. So.
And this isn't an immediate near-term solution, but we are taking a fresh look at infrastructure, our infrastructure assets, including our roads more generally, and it's part of an ongoing, capital planning process and part of the comprehensive plan. One of the things has been suggested, do we raise the road along Mingo Point a few additional inches at least to address some of that nuisance flooding? That's one of many projects. Obviously, those are not inexpensive, and you've got to weigh the value versus the benefits versus the cost, but that's ongoing. Lynn, do you have a question?
Just a quick question. Does the town ever think of supplying sandbags? Any fire departments or anything like that when we have potential flooding coming in? Some of us just like to put sandbags around parts of the house. Sure. And it's just not available.
Yes, ma'am, there's a lot of areas they provide sand, and you have to fill your own bags and cart them off and put them wherever you want to put them. I would like to make a suggestion for anybody that wants a sandbag. If you go on Amazon.com, I don't get paid by these people, by the way. There is a product that you can purchase that you fill with water, and it acts better than a sandbag. You can stack them. It's just made out of plastic. Once you're done with it, you drain it, roll it up, stick it in your shed or under your house somewhere that you have access to it, and it works really well, and it doesn't make the mess that the sandbags do. That I can look up, and we'll get it out to y'all. I'll have Aaron send out an email, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. Yeah, we'll get it to you, and we'll make,
I'm sorry, it's
yeah,
it's a great alternative.
but it works very well, and they're very inexpensive.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I do want to, wanted to leave a lot of time, most of the time for your questions. This went on a little bit longer than I anticipated. But there were a couple of other things I wanted to mention, and evacuation, we talked about emergency preparedness, and evacuation is going to be a significant concern for all of us. And that relates, I wanted to provide a brief update on a number of kind of infrastructure development related initiatives. But the main one is I want to touch upon and just make sure everybody was aware and focused is on the county's main road corridor project. Now, you've probably seen news of that. The question is how much people have focused on it and what its not gonna be able to see much of this, but what this is the Corridor C project, which is just basically from Brownswood down to the intersection of River Road and Betsy Carrison along Main Road and Bogaget. It doesn't include River Road, it doesn't include the flyover at 17, that's just that stretch. The key here, we can hone in on a couple of the sheets, probably sheet one, I don't know if you could do that first, that you should be most aware of is there will be a plan, a roundabout at the Betsy Carrison River Bohaget intersection right now. So right across from the ACE, a planned roundabout. Okay, so not much, there's not much more to add about that. The key is what's happening, what's planned, and who is opposing certain aspects of the plans further up the road. Where it really gets a little bit more interesting is there is a plan putting in basically 4 lanes between Brownswood, Brownswood, just north of Maine, just north of Maybank, down to Edendale. That's the current plan. In addition to 4 lanes, there's a planned multi-purpose trail, bike and pedestrian trail, that will run all the way down to just south of the Betsy Carrison River Bohaget intersection. The only reason it just stops there is because that's the end of that project. Now, we could separately address running that all the way down here to Kiowa and Seabrook is one of the things I'd like to talk about. The most important thing, I don't know, I think is it slide, section 3, slide 3 or 2, which shows what's going on between Vale and Plow Ground. So 4 lanes now planned. This is what the county's recommendation is, preferred alternative from Brownswood down to Edendale, as well as the bike path. I collaborated, with other county council members and the Johns Island Task Force and a number of initiatives. Council member Joe Boykin and the Johns Island Task Force are coming out strongly against the widening below Plow Ground down to Edendale. They're coming out strongly against the bike path all the way south. They just want to focus on the area between Plow Ground and Brownswood, so central Johns Island. Now, that is an important congestion area. My concern is looking to the future, particularly ingress and egress off the island. This is our one shot. There is no opportunity to make any major changes to this plan at this point in time. Even if this thing stays on track, it's going to take about 5 years to get fully built out. The thing is, what will happen, this gets a little complicated if you're aware of the, if you show kind of Plow Ground, the opportunities for ingress and egress off the island in the future. You've probably heard of the southern pitchfork. The northern pitchfork's already been done. So if you right past Plow Ground, coming up river, there will be an alternative path onto Maybank just before the bridge over into James Island. My operating assumption is that in the future, a lot of people going to Charleston would go up just like they usually do, but rather than turning right at Maybank, would take a right on Plow Ground. There will be a circle there, and then you can feed on to the southern pitchfork, and then across the bridge that would avoid a lot of that congestion along Maybank. In addition, if it's ever built, 526, that's where you would access 526. So because River's not going to be expanded at all, my own view is for the benefit of Kiowa Island residents and Seabrook residents, it's important to get as much of that road expansion put in at this point in time because it's not going to happen later. And again, my view looking ahead is we want to be able to have as much 4-lane up there past Edenvale as we can. You can stay in the right lane all the way up directly on to feed onto a turbo roundabout at Plow Ground, which is not going to be developed much along there because that's all AGR and AG8. Feed on to the roundabout and then straight on to the southern Pitchfork or 526. But that's just one person's view on all that. But what I encourage everybody is to take a look at this and think about what your thoughts on it are. If you have comments, you need to provide those comments. Whether we'll consider, a council position on this. I think Seabrook may be considering the same thing prior to the end of the comment period. We'll certainly consider that. My own preference is I think it would be great to have a bike path all the way up towards Maybank from here. Others may or may not disagree. Listen, there are trade-offs. Widening and the bike path entails eminent domain, and there will be impacted trees, and there will be impacted homes and properties, some of which may have to be relocated. So those are difficult questions and difficult trade-offs. The county's recommendation right now, which is a combination of their original proposal, one basic alternative one, and then the Rational Roads proposal, and it's now become what's known as Alternative 8, which is just a combination of those, is what's being proposed. Given where we are, my own view is it seems pretty reasonable. Other things we'd like to have done, I'm concerned about now that may be cut back more than is beneficial for the lower part of Johns Island residents. So that, I don't know if that is, which intersection is that right there?
This is the intersection at Plow Ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which,
So
that's part. So you're seeing the red is the extra 4 lanes going down. There's a new bridge there and going down to Edenvale. And there should be a purple, I thought, in there, which is bike path,
Yeah,
but I don't see it on the other side. But anyway, but they would, for some reason, some folks on Johns Island, the decision makers, don't think there's much traffic that goes further south of Plaquemine, which there is. As far as I can ascertain, drive every time I drive there. There's very few people that are coming south that take a left onto Plow Ground. There's not much diverting. Some diverts at Edenvale, because that cuts over to River and other industrial areas in the center of the island. Most of it just comes straight down. But John, any other, I don't know if you've had any discussions with the staff. The one question is whether, we would want a separate presentation from the project team. There was a public meeting, I don't know if you all went to last week, up at St. John's Church, right, or just off of Maybank and Main. John, any?
No, I would just reiterate 2 things. The comment period ends on June 14th. So if you are considering making comments, we actually really do consider making written formal comments to Charleston County as part of this particular process. What the intersection of Plow Ground, I would share the difference in what was originally proposed by what the Rational Roads Group and the Charleston County original alt. One was that, and roundabout was proposed for this intersection. I think the throughputs or high volumes where that roundabout just would fail. And so those are the things that I would encourage you guys to look at, just the intersections of Plow Ground and Bohicket, as well as the main intersection of Main and Maybank, because that is also another significant intersection improvement regarding this corridor segment of segment C.
So John, you're saying that you think, are you saying that if there was a roundabout at Plow Ground, it would fail because the volume is just too high?
That I think is the reason why the county did not recommend a roundabout at this particular intersection. Yeah.
There is a roundabout planned down at Edenvale. Right at the Edenvale, the main. I think they plan to open up the little northern Edenvale, the little spur that's closed off right now. I think that's the plan to be reopened. but there's also the main Edenvale intersection, there would be a roundabout there.
I saw it in the number.
Yes, Carol?
I guess my one thought is opposite of yours with the bike path going all the way down. I think Kiowa already has a problem with the spandex bikers coming down here to ride on the roads, and that seems like that would encourage them. I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on that, but I don't know that we want to encourage the spandex coming.
Well, I can't comment on the spandex bikers, but, I think this is a worthwhile kind of conversation for the community to have. There certainly is the interest on the part of, for example, Kiowa River Estates and Kiowa River to have more pedestrian and bike access down to Freshfields Village and Andale West. My view is they're going to come anyway, and to the extent that some choose to come by bike rather than car is, you know, if I had to choose between the two, I'd prefer more bike activity or pedestrian activity. In addition, as you're probably all aware, Low Country Land Trust, and particularly the Kiowa Conservancy, are doing more about, and you know, Madeline, I think, actually has, Councilmember Kay has a podcast upcoming. No, is that with you or was that Russ? That's Russ. That, Russ, okay, Councilmember Berner. With their opportunities to conserve more property. Some of it is simply conservation easement. Some of it is acquired, and particularly by the Conservancy, they're going to have an area that's going to kind of be the parking area, but that's only because there's no other way to access it, right where Rosebank Farms used to be, and they've acquired a couple of properties just north of that that run all the way out to the river that'll have interpretive trails and things like that. It would be great to have more pedestrian and bicycle connectivity to all of these things than is the case now, but we've got a plan for that. We've got to solve for, and I've talked about, you know, resuscitating the idea of a pedestrian bicycle bridge right here that from the municipal center and areas north into Freshfields Village and what will be Andale West.
The other thing I would just add too, just the safety component that's built into the project too. So being able to separate bikers from, even though we see Bohicket Road as not very pedestrian friendly, there are still folks who actually are on the side and bike Bohicket Road. And so that component of trying to separate
Taking
that
your
traffic
life into your
is-
hands. So, but anyway, just we don't need to belabor this one, but I hope everybody, again, and anybody who's watching, will take a fresh look at this and think about what the implications are. And if you have views, as John said, please send in comments. Just kind of minor, quick little updates on some other infrastructure development projects. I hope everybody will have noticed that the primary construction work has been completed on the new triangle outside the main gate. In addition, in combination with the new traffic control officer, it appears that both of these measures, having a consistent outbound lane and then now providing better turnage into and off of ingress and egress off of Beachwalker Drive, is working pretty effectively relative to where we were. Now, there's going to be, hopefully soon, we'll complete that project with some additional landscaping and we'll get rid of the stanchions. So that project will be completed. If you haven't gone down Beachwalker Drive, there has been a landscaping enhancement project along Beachwalker Drive. I encourage you to look at that. The idea is to kind of basically match everything along Kiowa Island Parkway with Beachwalker Drive and make that a little bit more attractive than it has been in the past. We do need to repair, or not repair, but replace or repave Beachwalker Drive at some point. It's a deteriorating road that is probably beyond its actual expected lifespan right now. It's never been repaved. Yes, Diane.
Exiting off Beachwalker and turning left. I guess I'm wondering why the new blacktop pavement and the arrow still another arrow, merging arrow, there that didn't get covered over and didn't get repainted. So we actually have one fewer merging arrows. If you were coming off Beachwalker, turning left to go to Freshfields, you're trying to merge into the cars coming past you on the right.
Yep.
In fact, we almost rear-ended a car on the way over here today because the guy came, saw he couldn't merge and stopped dead right in front of us because it ends quickly. And it used to end a little further up, so it's not as clear that you can keep going a little bit further before you have to get over.
I'm not, because I obviously do that every day, and I haven't noticed that particularly. What I will say, just one observation, is that there is supposed to be some signage that makes the point to people exiting the island, that it's a merging area as well. There needs to be some, at least education, that that's supposed to be a zippered merge, and that there is no, like, right-of-way for the people exiting off the island. Basically, kind of whoever's in front is supposed to have, right-of-way. It's not exactly how it's working right now, but there needs to be a combination of better signage. Maybe I don't know whether we need to look at an additional arrow there and some education as to.
The additional arrow is already there.
Oh, okay.
It just wasn't repainted.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it wasn't, new pavement didn't go as far as the final arrow, and the final arrow is there faded, and it hasn't been repainted.
I'll go out there and take a look, and if we need to bring the striper back in to refinish that last arrow.
The right-hand lane is traveling at 25 miles an hour. The left-hand lane making the turn to merge is stopped. And you get into some dicey situation.
Well, there is, yeah, people are going more quickly through there. Not everybody is doing just 25 through there. And particularly if they get past the gate, they start accelerating. There should be enough runway for somebody coming off of Beachwalker before you merge to get up to 25 pretty easily. But there is still the potential for some conflict. There's no question. It's merging, and it's going to be, again, education, signage.
What's happening when people are coming off of Beachwalker and turning left? They stop. They don't keep going. And it backs up the traffic.
So I've actually never seen that, so I'll take your word for it, but having lived down Beachwalker, I've never seen anybody myself stop. I'm not saying they don't, but.
They come up, they go through the entrance to the main gate, and they stop there. They don't keep going. They stop in that lane, the turn lane. The lane that then merges into one lane. Enter through the gate, enter into. Yeah. She's talking behind the gate. She's behind the gate. Behind the gate,
You're talking about behind.
I'm behind.
Off Beachwalker on the right.
When you turn left to go off the island.
Yeah.
Beachwalker, the cars get there, and they stop. They don't keep going in the lane. And so traffic coming off of Beachwalker that also wants to turn left can't.
Okay, I need to monitor, but I've just
Have
never
Tony
seen it.
monitor that too,
Yeah.
since he's out there. And if there's something that we need to enhance out there, then we certainly can. We'll have Tony monitor it, and
I
then.
mean, we have others that live down Beachwalker. Have others experienced that?
Not that, we went back for weeks, so.
Okay. Lisa, I don't think that's a frequent phenomena, but it's not to say that, yeah.
Because when you make that turn, you look in your right-hand mirror, and they are accelerating. And I can see somebody going,
Well, part of the issue that a couple of council members did have a little disagreement with our engineering firm, because right now, as it's designed, it encourages a fairly quick interaction where you have the potential to get broadsided if you're not paying attention. So the idea was actually to force a little longer parallel track. But, well, so people, I don't know how we stop people from stopping. But the idea is there's supposed to be a zippered merge. You have opportunity to get up to 25. They shouldn't be going more than 25, but.
Signage for the people leaving, is signage telling them to be aware of merging?
Well, that's supposed to be, there is supposed to be, that was part of the plan, a sign to say, to the exiting lane before you get up there, merging traffic.
Because the pattern that had been established was that the folks exiting on the right, so leaving the intersection that way, had complete right of way and discussions around the definition of merging and better signage. This is now a merge pattern.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a merge pattern, so you're not supposed to stop in the, on the people coming onto Beach Walker. I mean, that's, if you stop, that's when you create.
I'll go visit the intersection. I'll take a look. We'll have people monitoring for that scenario. And if we need to put some supplemental signage or striping or anything out there, then we'll certainly do that.
And it may be true that it's people visiting Beach Walker Park, because I don't think people who live here are stopping there. I think they're expecting the people on the right, if they're ahead, to stop and get over. I mean, to stop or slow down. Yes, Lance?
I know you're trying to, keep good communication going between KICA and the town. Are you looking at the KICA Weekly as a way to help with the education as well, so people understand?
Aaron has regular communications with Leah Burris, who's communications director at KICA, and they actually do post some of our stuff. So if we need to do more of that, because the KICA stuff does get to every homeowner, whereas that's not necessarily true of the town unless you self-selected.
That's what I was
Yeah, KICA doesn't get to everybody.
And it's interesting that, and I've heard it said several times, it's portrayed as coming off the island, coming through the main gate. Beach Walker's on the island.
Yes.
And that might help in the
Yeah,
education as well.
Well, thank you on that. Just real quickly, yeah, go ahead.
It could be the people who are illegally staying in the Cape. Have an occupancy without an occupancy, where the parking.
Okay.
I took videos of it last night, I didn't know where to post it for grins and giggles of going, okay. Do we have a date of when they will become legal?
So, well, we can talk about certificates of occupancy have already been issued. There are already people living in the Cape. So there is no issue with regard to compliance. They've passed the building inspection, or at least three of the buildings, two of the buildings, three of the buildings.
Right now, we have building 100 and 600
Okay.
that have their occupancy certificates, so people have been moving in there.
And just to be clear, there is the requisite parking provided in those buildings for building residents. So there is no issue right now with people starting to move in to the residences. So, yes, Carol?
Well, at the KICA meeting, they had said that 7 had moved in at the beginning of the month, and 29 more closings were happening. And then the next day at the town meeting, they talked about opening the pool up for guests. Can you update us?
Just,
Residents and their guests. Right.
yeah.
So have you monitored that, or what is the
The-
status on those?
They just received their TCO, meaning the beach club just received their TCO. Yeah, no, yes, temporary certificate occupancy, sorry. So it is only for the pool and the fitness club. And directly for residents only. And obviously their guests. The bar area is not part of that TCO. It is not to be opened until all parking is satisfied, and nor are the cottages. In fact, we did not allow them to even put furniture in the cottages until the parking is satisfied. So nobody will be moving into the cottages.
So at this juncture, it's like, the Timbers pool for Timbers residents, or even in our neighborhood, Riverview or Inlet Cove or others, you have a amenity for the residents and your guest. That's what is going to be open and available right now, because we're talking focused primarily on the parking issue. There is the minimum required number of parking spaces in the buildings for the residents there. So it's an amenity for them.
Since we cracked the seal, is anything being done about the clear cutting of the maritime forest? There's fines for parking on the side of the road and having trailers in your driveway and everything else. Is there a fine for clear cutting the forest?
The clear cutting of the forest for the staging area was part of the site plan approval for the Cape. If staff wants to jump in beyond that, that's kind of how I will characterize it. So that's what occurred. What we are looking at going forward, both with regard to our tree ordinance as well as our temporary use ordinance, is ensuring that trees are not taken down just for what are supposed to be temporary staging areas going forward.
Second.
Yeah, did you?
I was just saying that's up for second reading for the temporary uses. What Mayor Belt has just shared on temporary uses and having a separate permit within our zoning code that would allow for, if a property is off-site or a different area, that would require a different permit. So that's going through the review process. That'll be what, June? June 4th. Yeah.
Oh, yes, Lisa.
How about an update on where we are with the parking issue?
Well, you can provide any detail on this. There are continuing to be, comments have been issued by the planning director. I believe that additional comments will be forthcoming, both with regard to upper and lower Beach Walker, as well as Cape Point Road extension. So those are all under site plan review process right now. And so nothing has been approved. I believe, at least with regard to one of those, in addition to the parking issues at Ocean Pines, I believe that the planning director has noted that at least that one or more variances would be required for the Cape Point Road project.
So no approvals have been granted for either of the projects. Because we've been in this particular site plan review process at this stage, the substantive comments have not changed. The parking is a substantive issue for the Cape Point Access Road, and there are some other comments that have been issued regarding to Beach Walker and the West End, as well as the Ocean Pines. Sort of the ball is still in the applicant's sort of court, if you will, and that's kind of where we are, man. Ball's still court.
Just for where we want to be now, and that's the point of issuing essentially a fresh set of comment letters, is so that everybody's on the same page as to the comments that have already been previously identified by the planning staff, to which have not yet been addressed or responded with revised applications or request for variance. there have been a number of additional comments that have been raised, been identified as a result of the ongoing review process, raised by community members, neighboring associations, and those will be, to the extent that there are additional comments that have been identified that may require either additional revisions to the application materials as previously submitted and/or variances, that will all be kind of reflected and captured and to say, here's where we are in terms of the current state of play.
And when you submit those comments back to the applicant, is there a deadline that goes with it?
No, it's not technically a deadline. It's as long as the applicant is making a good faith effort to respond and communicate with us, we treat it as an open application. We've had applications where they just go radio silent, if you will, and for 6 months to 8 months or even a year, where we'll just contact them again saying, hey, this is sort of a final opportunity to kind of make sure that you respond to these outstanding comments, and if not, then we'll close out that permit, and it essentially would need to restart the process.
So on that continuum of sort of a good faith effort to radio silence, where is this applicant?
I mean, they have been communicating effectively with us, understanding there's a lot of moving parts to this, to say that. I mean, they are. So we have been in communication with the applicant, so it isn't that they're, have gone radio silence as the example that I've used.
And it's fair to say that there are perhaps differences of view with regard to some of these issues and you know, how that process will play out, whether the applicant will choose to seek a variance or not, or take an alternative path, choose an alternative path to addressing those issues, I think remains to be seen yet.
Who decides on the variance? Is that the BZA?
Right, that's Board of Zoning Appeals.
A couple of other things to just note, MUSC is still in the site plan review process. I don't think there are major kind of zoning issues attendant to that at this juncture. There were some landscaping, and also there continues to be a not fully resolved. Maybe you have an update on some
Yes.
traffic management related issues and encroachment.
I spoke with the MUSC rep actually this morning. They essentially have 3 sort of what I would call outstanding comments relative to our site plan review process that they're working through. One of those is relatively getting through Architectural Review Board, Freshfields Architectural Review Board, and that's regarding their landscape plan. The second is their encroachment permit. That encroachment permit is sort of what I would say is the heavy lift out of all of these, because
And
that
that's
requires.
with the town of Seabrook.
That requires approval from the town of Seabrook Island. And so I understand that they have a meeting on Thursday with staff, and to be able to try to schedule when that would essentially go before their planning commission for review. So I anticipate that this would be going before Seabrook's planning commission with maybe in the next month or so, based on their rhythm of their planning commission, and that would allow us to understand if there are any significant impacts. We did receive a copy of their traffic impact analysis, and so we'll review that as part of the town review, but officially, the encroachment permit has to come from the Seabrook Island because that's their road that they manage. And the third is really just a shared agreement based on the TIA that if that encroachment permit is granted, that access easement, which is shared with Seafields, that they legally work out that between them and Seafields. And so that's one small legal thing that they're working through with Seafields as they share driveway for access to their parcel there.
So the challenging thing there is both Seafields and MUSC, where it has now been relocated, are within the town of Kiowa Island, but they're accessing off of a road owned by the town of Seabrook. So they have to satisfy Seabrook with regard to encroachment-related infrastructure management issues, and that's what's being worked through. Expectation is?
I would say, I think that most of the hurdles would be addressed within them going before. The TIA, based on its return, shows no significant impacts from a traffic standpoint. That's still Seabrook's judgment call of whether or not they would require any additional mitigation steps, but I think anticipate a 2 months process, good faith, that MUSC would be able to have zoning approval from the town based on those conditions of what Seabrook approves, and then we are trying to keep them on their outlook to begin this winter, this fall. No promise end date, of course, because that now I think we've pushed that at least 3 to 5 months.
Does that give them 2 accesses that they're looking for, the 2 access points?
They would only have one ingress egress, and that would be off of Seabrook Island Road.
So they're not asking for the Betsy Carrots access?
No, so that's probably the previous site that you're thinking about. They've relocated
This
across.
is now on the other side of the road.
Yeah, the other side of the road.
Yeah. Yes, Lisa?
So if I understood him correctly, in our role with Roger Warren, he suggested that the whole Fresh Fields expansion was going to take a really, really, really long time. What's that? Okay, I misunderstood. So it wasn't that the Harris Teeter.
Yes, yeah, I mean, but Andale West is it's not Fresh Fields, it's adjacent to Fresh Fields. So, yes, and that was the last thing I was going to touch upon, and Stephanie may have additional information as well. So, a couple of things. One, the point person for Riverstone that had been the person responsible for the project has left the company, starting at his own firm. That's probably occasioned, some delay. But he was the individual that the town had worked with, but also community members, particularly the Cacique HOA and Preserve Kiowa, back at the time that those plans were being revised, was the person that the community dealt with most directly. So he's gone on. I've had a chance to speak with the person who's replaced him. I suspect you have, I believe you have as well. My understanding is this is all that it is at this point in time, is that there have been some delays occasioned by, initially there were some issues with regard to the county, I think with regard to the retention pond, but those are no longer the issues. I think there are some issues with regard to the Harris Teeter, not the Harris Teeter, but Harris Teeter, both with regard to site planning, cost-related issues. And as a result of that, this comes not from Riverstone, but from Eden's, is my understanding that Harris Teeter has entered into a short-term extension of its current lease that was otherwise due to expire in Fresh Fields, because the timing wasn't going to line up with, where they originally wanted to have the new store built. But I'm not sure, I don't have anything kind of more definitive than that. I'm not sure there is anything more definitive at that time. So, but at least what has been represented is the plan is still on the part of all the parties to move forward as envisioned. It's just taken a little bit longer and a little bit more complicated time frame to get there.
Do we know how long that short-term rental is with Harris Teeter?
I don't. So, I may have been told, but in any event, it was like, whatever the number was, it didn't mean that I think there was an agreed upon out. Shorter than that if things moved more quickly. So that was that was actually the last of the infrastructure development projects. So is there anything else that anybody has on their mind that you wanted to raise of the town that we hadn't already talked about? Yes, ma'am.
This is a really small thing, but the compost program, I'm excited that we have one. How do we know where to get the appropriate receptacles? What you have in your own home?
Compost.
Yeah, where to get the receptacles for composting.
We don't provide the receptacles, but we have the centralized places that you can drop them off. So we have one at Town Hall that's behind the building, and then there's one at Kestrel Court.
And what I'm trying to understand is, where do we get the ones? I'm just looking for a
We don't have any right now that, probably online.
Yeah, I was thinking Amazon.
I know like Aldi sells them and, yeah, yeah.
Yes, Lance?
I was just gonna say thank you for doing this and thank you staff for participating as well.
Well, thank you all for taking the time. I mean, we've got, if you want more time, you have more questions, we're here for you. Yes, sir.
Hey, Brett, just a question from somebody who's texted it to me, not mine, but East-West, it's about the Cape. Is East-West Hospitality Services on site at the Cape now? Do they have their parking defined? And per the memorandum understanding, is that parking access from Beach Walker? Then I would ask the question.
The MOU with Kika.
Well, so if you're talking about the Kika MOU, the MOU with Kika, that is a Kika MOU. It's not a town's MOU. That MOU required, is my recollection, but if somebody, Kika wants to correct me, two things. One of which is primary access to the club was supposed to be off Beachwalker Drive. So there are a couple of aspects to that. One is the applicant was proposing some parking along the Cape Point Road extension, which, as per comment letter issued by the planning director, that parking in that area, which was proposed to be 20 spots, did not conform with the town's parking regulations under 12-128, amongst other things. It also, which would require a variance. And it also probably doesn't meet the use requirements because it's commercial use for a residential zoned R1, and I don't know if there are other issues as well. But apart from that, the latest plan, which had still been deemed not yet responsive to the comments issued by the planning director, would have had an additional 36 spots accessible for the club off of Beachwalker Drive, in addition to the 30 that were planned on coming off of Duneside and Southern Pines Lane. One might argue, that's up to Kika to decide, that if that were the case, plus you built an additional number of parking spaces in there to meet the number required in the planning director's letter, that would satisfy at least that element of the MOU. But again, that's not exactly a town issue, but we've got to be mindful of the MOU.
And I would just add that what's been communicated to planning department is that the applicant or representative has been trying to work that out with, or at least have discussions with Kika. So to what that value is, I'll just add that component.
And I'd say, from my point of view, that the discussion was, if they pulled in off of Beachwalker to park, and parking was full there, then they'd have to go around to Duneside, and if that was full, then do they go back around, and back around, and back around, and that's causing a lot more traffic. So I don't know what Kika's gonna do with that, but it just seemed like the plan wasn't smooth, and was causing people to go from one place around back to the other, according to parking spots available.
It's complicated because you can't have, Kika's insisted, and understandably so, that you can't have access to the island through, without going through the main gate. Well, right now. So I will say, we are where we are right now. And so the question is, right now, comments have been issued from the town, from the planning department. And thus far as I can ascertain, correct me if I'm wrong, the latest plans as revised that were submitted by the applicant do not yet meet all of the comments that have been issued, and I suspect there have been I believe there have been others that have been identified even since the initially issued comments. So right now. There is, I think you said, they have not been approved. They're still under review. I think Lisa's question is a fair one. The planning director, John, said, you know, that there's, as long as there's some kind of active level of engagement or discussion, exactly what that entails, you know, those kinds of issues we're continuing to work through. So there are still issues out there. So, under that, do you think that? Okay. Well, that's fine. If they're watching and sending the text, that's the best way to do it, I guess, if they can't. Anything else?
Just as an opportunity, we do have 2 vacancies on our tree preservation board that we're still advertising. So just know that if you know anyone who's interested in wanting to serve or volunteer, we still have 2 seats available on our tree preservation board. So that's really a new board that's been created. So.
And by the way, there may be other opportunities to involve interested community members. You know, we're trying to think about how to look at some of these projects. We've talked about potential projects, whether we build little separate rather than a standing committee, build a little project team around that. So the one thing I would note is extraordinarily gratifying is for the recent Planning Commission opening. We had, what, 6 applicants, all of high quality, and I think there were some others that even advanced some interest that ended up not applying. I won't point out who they may be, but that used to be the case. You couldn't get anybody for any of these positions. And there was probably a reason that some planning commission members stayed on for years and years and years, because there was just nobody to step into the void. I think it reflects a really engaged community right now. You know, the number of people that have been running for council slots, for KICA board member slots, for KICA committees, and now the town's committees and commissions, I find very, very refreshing. And I hope that people, now you can't get everybody. There's, you know, 6 great people that applied, and, you know, we can only have 1 planning commission spot. So whether it's the Tree and Preservation Board or other things that might open up. Dorota was hoping to get an intern to do some audit-related stuff. So anybody that has any auditing experience that wants to volunteer, she actually wants to collect more revenues for the town, which is a good thing. So anyway, well, I guess we can break a little bit early. Again, I want to thank the staff for making time this afternoon. I know some of them were not supposed to be here, but thank you all for joining us. Appreciate it.